Let's go to the book of Daniel, chapter 3, verse 8.
Daniel 3 and 8. Wherefore, at that time, certain Chaldeans came near, and accused the Jews. They spake and said to the king Nebuchadnezzar, O king, live forever. Thou, O king, hast made a decree, that every man that shall hear the sound of the cornet, flute, harp, sackbut, psaltery, and dulcimer, and all kinds of music, shall fall down and worship the golden image. And whoso falleth not down and worshipeth, that he should be cast into the midst of a burning fiery furnace. There are certain Jews whom thou hast set over the affairs of the province of Babylon, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. These men, O king, have not regarded thee. They serve not thy gods, nor worship the golden image which thou hast set up. Then Nebuchadnezzar, in his rage and fury, commanded to bring Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Then they brought these men before the king.
Right, so these are three Hebrew men who were brought over in the captivity of Jerusalem. Okay, that captivity took place primarily starting in 589 BC. And they would gradually bring Israelites, primarily Israelites who were of good stock, of high regard, of high repute. Okay, those who were princes and things of that nature, those who were of high intelligence or what have you, and they would bring them over to Babylon. All right. Now, the story of Daniel, or the book of Daniel, is a story about primarily Daniel himself, who was one of those children that were brought to Babylon and raised up in Babylon, but also there were others such as Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego who were also brought over from Jerusalem into the captivity of Babylon and were raised up to be eunuchs and raised up to be wise men in Babylon. Okay, so obviously within Babylon they are an idolatrous nation. So they had a custom that whenever the music played, similar and you go to Islamic countries, every few hours or so, they'll have the reciting of the Quran playing. Okay, they'll have this music playing where they're reciting the Quran, and everyone must fall down and worship regardless of what you're doing. If you're out in the street, if you're in a place of business, you must fall down and worship at that time. Okay, well, that's similar to what was set up in Babylon, where they would have times a day where music is played. Everyone must worship the golden image as a decree from the king, or as it was decreed from the king. Okay? Now, the issue was these three men, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, they were Jews who, according to the Jew law or the Israelite law, could not fall down and worship idols. They were commanded not to do so. Okay? When you go into the epistle of Jeremiah, he tells the Israelites, don't be afraid of the idols when you go into Babylon. Okay? Be sure that you hold to the customs and the laws of your fathers and not worshiping the great idols that you're going to see in Babylon. Don't allow anyone to force you into worshiping those images. So they kept to that principle. They kept to those customs. They kept to those laws. Well, because of it, because they kept to those laws, they were imprisoned. Okay? Now, they weren't imprisoned because they decided to go and commit murders in Babylon and kill idolaters in Babylon. They didn't go around stealing from the Babylonians. That's not why they landed in prison. They landed in prison because they held the customs and the laws of their forefathers. Which laws? Not worshiping any other god outside of the Most High God and not bowing down to idols. Okay? So for that purpose, they were thrown in prison. All right? Go ahead.
Daniel 3 and 14. Nebuchadnezzar spake and said unto them, Is it true, O Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego? Do not ye serve my gods, nor worship the golden image which I have set up? Now if ye be ready, that at what time ye hear the sound of the cornet, flute, harp, sackbut, psaltery, and dulcimer, and all kinds of music, ye fall down and worship the image which I have made, well. But if ye worship not, ye shall be cast the same hour into the midst of a burning fiery furnace. And who is that God that shall deliver you out of my hands?
So he said, who is the Most High? This God that you worship, this God whose laws you keep, who is he that he will deliver you out of my hands if I were to throw you into this burning furnace for not worshiping my gods? What power does this God have that you worship that will deliver you from this fiery furnace for not worshiping my idols? Well, we all know the story. Eventually, Nebuchadnezzar found out exactly who that God is. Let's read on. Verse number 16.
Verse 16. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego answered and said to the king, O Nebuchadnezzar, we are not careful to answer thee in this matter. If it be so, our God whom we serve is able to deliver us from the burning fiery furnace, and he will deliver us out of thine hand, O king.
So they said, we're not careful to answer thee in this situation. We don't even have to think about our answer or think about our response in this situation. We don't have to ponder what we're going to do in this situation. Okay? We're coming straight forward. If you were to throw us into this fiery furnace, our God would deliver us. Simple and plain. Okay? Read on.
But if not, be it known unto thee, O king, that we will not serve thy gods, nor worship the golden image which thou hast set up.
Exactly. So regardless of what you do, we're not going to bow down to your gods. Read on.
Then was Nebuchadnezzar full of fury, and the form of his visage was changed against Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Therefore he spake and commanded that they should heat the furnace 7 times more than it was wont to be heated.
Right. So he wanted this fiery furnace to be burned 7 times hotter than it was normally heated. Okay? Just to show that or make an example of these men who rejected him and refused to worship his gods to his face. Read on.
And he commanded the most mighty men that were in his army to bind Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, and to cast them into the burning fiery furnace. Then these men were bound in their coats, their hosen, and their hats, and their other garments, and they were cast into the midst of the burning fiery furnace. Therefore, because the king's commandment was urgent, and the furnace exceeding hot, the flame of the fire slew those men that took up Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. And these 3 men, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, fell down, bound into the midst of the burning fiery furnace.
So it says the fire was so fierce that it burnt the men that were trying to put Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego into the furnace. That's how vicious this fire was. Okay? But the one thing that we want you all to take away from this story is the confidence and the boldness that these men possessed. Even in the face of death, even in the face of torture, they carried a boldness with them that irregardless of what you have decided to do with us, we're not going to turn our back on God. Okay? And as we read earlier, the Apostle Paul said that we get confidence when we read of his tribulation. Right? So the question is, where did they get their confidence from? To say that in the face of tribulation, we're not going to fold. We're not going to bend backwards. Okay? We're going to stand on our ground. We're going to stand on our commandments. We're going to stand with our God. And we're going to take heed to what he has commanded us. Where did they get that from? Well, they had examples of those who came before them. They had examples of men such as Moses, who stood in the face of adversity. Okay? They had examples of Abraham, who stood in the face of adversity. They had examples of David, who stood in the face of adversity. So they had many examples who they could look to in their time to say that, well, they faced adversity, and yet the Most High delivered them. And the same God that delivered them is the same God that we worship And therefore, that same God who had the power to deliver them has the same exact power to deliver us. So they, as Paul, was an example to those of his time. And those of his time are an example for us in our time. They had examples for those or of those that came before them, who served as examples to say that, hey, even in the face of death and tribulation, when it seems like no way, we're going to trust the Most High's way, and he will make a way.
Okay, this is in the annotated Apocrypha 3:24. And they walked in the midst of the fire, praising God and blessing the Lord. Then Azarias stood up and prayed on this manner, and opening his mouth in the midst of the fire said, Blessed art thou, O Lord God of our fathers. Thy name is worthy to be praised and glorified forevermore. For thou art righteous in all the things that thou hast done to us. Yea, true are all thy works, thy ways are right, and all thy judgments truth.
Mm-hmm.